The story revolves around a middle-aged man who has been facing the aftermath of an ugly divorce. Down on his luck, he loses his job but gets hired to train soldiers who lack basic educational skills. As time passes by, he turns them into champion students, and they make him a better man. The movie opens up as Bill Rago, a divorced advertising executive, makes his way towards downtown Detroit. He is currently running late for office, and things only get worse as he soon gets stuck in traffic. Meanwhile, in his office, his colleagues from the advertising department are having a meeting with two potential clients. As it is Bill who is responsible for the presentation, his colleagues try to stall the meeting as long as possible. But when the clients grow extremely restless, they decide to call Bill, who is still stuck in traffic. He asks his colleague to put him on speaker so that he could start the presentation through the phone. However, as he begins explaining, the clients don't look too enthusiastic with his ideas. Soon, the traffic starts moving, and the network is also interrupted. Bill finally makes it to the office 5 minutes later, but it's too late. The clients have left. He then overhears the CEO of the company complaining about his recent performances. It is revealed that the company paid Bill a whopping $6 million per year for his services. But recently, his ideas have been out of touch, and his behavior towards the clients have been hostile. This prompts the company to fire him on the spot. That evening, Bill returns home and checks his answering machine. He has a lot of messages, mostly from people asking him to pay back the money he owes them. One among them is his daughter Emily, who lives with her mother. She reluctantly asks him to fund her science trip to Mexico because her mother cannot afford such an expense at the moment. The following morning, Bill lines up at the local government office with hundreds of other people to get signed for a welfare program and hopefully find a new job. He has a master's degree from Princeton University, and this is the first time he has been unemployed. But he gets irritated by the tedious procedure and talks rudely to everyone. The receptionist tells him to control his snarky attitude and come back the next week. In the meantime, his relationship with Emily also starts souring because he does not tell her about losing his job. Instead, he mocks her interests in astronomy when she once again asks for money to go to Mexico for the science trip. A week passes by, and Bill visits the government welfare office once more. This time, he is friendly to the receptionist, and she gives him good news. They have found him a new job, teaching basic literacy classes at a nearby U.S. Army training base in Fort McLean. Initially, Bill is reluctant to join as he has never taught before. But since the job has a decent pay and offers lodging and fooding, he eventually agrees to join. In the next scene, Bill reaches Fort McLean, where Captain Murdoch explains to him his new job. The U.S. is fighting a war in the Middle East at the moment, and the Army needs as many recruits as possible. Many youngsters who join the Army lack even the basic educational foundation, which makes it difficult for them to follow orders. Thus, the Army wants to try out a 6-week program where Bill will be in charge of increasing the comprehension levels of a group of 8 cadets. The first few days at his job do not get off to a good start. The group does not seem to respect his authority because he is a civilian. On top of that, he has no idea what or how to teach them. In his introductory class, Bill takes the attendance and then asks them to write why they joined the Army. He plans to use this to check their comprehension levels in the next class. On the other hand, the ex-advertising executive also finds it hard to get used to the Army's strict time schedules. Drills start as early as 4:30 a.m., disturbing his sleep. He gets so fed up that he calls one of his ex-colleagues and begs him to find any kind of job, even if it means that he has to work without pay. During the next class, Bill patiently sits down and listens to why his students joined the Army, so as to judge their writing skills. But as the cadets start reading their reasons, he starts getting a deeper understanding of their lives. Private Donald Benitez lost his sister to gang violence and thus joined the Army to be able to protect his family. Private Tommy Haywood, who grew up in a trailer park in Georgia, thought joining the Army would take him out of the woods and show him the wider world. While Private Miranda Myers grew up with a promiscuous mother and simply wanted to feel like she belonged somewhere, Private Jamal joined because he would be guaranteed 3 meals a day. Barely able to control his tears, Private Brian Davis reads out that he joined the Army because he wanted to be brave just like his father, who died serving in Vietnam. On the other hand, Private Roosevelt Hobbs and Private Jackson Leroy, who is an ex-football star, seem more reluctant to open up than the others. They simply state that they wanted to join the Army so that they could earn well. While these cadets struggle in their literary classes with Bill, their training does not go well either. Their drill instructor, Sergeant Cass, is a very strict man and hammers them for not being able to do various physical tasks. At this point, it seems like all 8 of these recruits will soon be thrown out of the Army for being incompetent. In this third class, Bill asks the students to bring whatever book they enjoy to the class. While he reads Shakespeare's Hamlet, the students read comic books and magazines. He then asks them to come forward and describe what they are reading, but the class descends into chaos as the cadets start joking and fooling around. Suddenly, Private Leroy asks him what book he is reading. In response, Bill tells them about Hamlet, describing it as intimacy, incest, and murder. This piques the students' interest, and they request him to tell them more about Hamlet. Bill reluctantly gives them a brief introduction to the play and teaches them about simile, metaphor, and oxymoron through it. But his uninterested efforts don't seem to be appreciated by the tough-as-nails drill sergeant Crass. One afternoon, as Bill is taking a walk around the fields, Crass confronts him. It is revealed that the sergeant was eavesdropping during his first class and was less than impressed with the lack of discipline among the students. Chastising the teacher, Cass accuses Bill of not taking his work seriously. He even goes on to say that teaching English to the cadets is useless, while the real work is done in the field, where they are trained to survive combat scenarios. The drill sergeant's insults prompt Bill to take his new teaching job more seriously. For the next class, he prints out a small version of Hamlet and hands it out to all the students. He asks them to arrange their desks in a circle and assigns each of them a character from the play. Everyone is extremely interested in this idea, other than Private Melvin, who is asleep for most of the time. Nonetheless, Bill assigns him the role of Polonius, the father of the Queen. The cadets then learn how to read and analyze difficult passages from the play. In the meantime, all of them also seem to be improving in their physical classes. Although Drill Sergeant Crass is hard on them, he also encourages them to push to the extreme. Back in the class, they learn how Hamlet's father was poisoned during his afternoon sleep. Because of this, he died without getting the chance to correct his wrongs, and his ghost gets stuck in purgatory. These passages move the cadets as they begin to relate it to their personal lives. A few days later, letters arrive at the facility, and surprisingly, Melvin also receives one. Haywood and Melvin sit down, open the letter, and begin reading it. Bill's classes are helping these cadets as they begin to read more fluently and notice things like similes easily. But the letter explains how Melvin's stepfather has started beating his siblings now that he is not there to protect them. It is then revealed that Melvin sleeps most of the time as a trauma response to his abusive family life. The following day, before their morning drill practice, Brian loses his late father's bracelet in his dirty laundry. He asks Benitez to help find it, and the two start to go through all the clothes, making them late for practice. When they finally arrive, Sergeant Crass punishes Benitez by making him do several push-ups. Bill, who has been watching this from nearby, asks him to take it easy on the kids. Having his authority questioned in front of all the cadets, Crass lunges towards Bill and the two men break out into an argument. Following this, Bill is called into the colonel's office, where he is told to follow the rules from now on. In the meantime, Bill also applies for other advertising jobs and goes for several interviews. This begins to affect his job as English teacher at Fort McLean as he starts coming late to classes. Fed up with his insincerity, the students walk out of his class when he appears with only 15 minutes remaining. But Bill stubbornly follows them to their training ground and demands to have a class even if it is for 15 minutes. When the students ignore him and start doing their obstacle course, Bill follows them all the way. He climbs a ladder to the top of the course and demands they pay him attention. Seeing a chance to take revenge on the English teacher, Sergeant Crass orders him to get down through a rope. And equally stubborn, Bill agrees to do so and somehow rappels down with the help of Melvin. This feat helps him regain respect among his students. That afternoon, Bill sits down with Private Leroy during lunchtime and asks him about his life. It is then revealed that Leroy used to be an all-star football player during his college days, but blew out his knee during practice, ending his chance to be a superstar NFL player. Now he has a baby coming soon, but wants the kid to be well-educated so that he has an alternative career path in the future. Meanwhile, the classes keep rolling smoothly and the students get more and more engaged in Hamlet. When Bill asks Hobbs to explain Hamlet's personality, the cadet gives a deep analysis of his madness. Surprising Bill. Later that day, the teacher goes to Captain Tom Murdoch's office and suggests Hobbs' name for lieutenant training, vouching for his sharp mind. On the flip side, things seem to improve drastically for everyone. While the students adapt Hamlet to their own version through rap lyrics, they also begin to improve in shooting and other field practices. But things soon take a turn for the worse. One morning, during breakfast, Captain Murdoch comes marching in the canteen with 2 police officers and arrests Private Hobbs. Bill sees him being taken away to prison and asks Murdoch the reason for his arrest. It is then revealed that Hobbs had used a fake driving license to get into the Army. Before joining Fort McLean, he used to sell drugs and had an arrest warrant against him. Bill realizes that when he went to Captain Murdoch's office the other day to recommend Hobbs for lieutenant training, he inadvertently made the Army look into Hobbs' personal record. That ultimately ended up causing his arrest. Bill and Sergeant Crass watch in disappointment as a promising young man's career comes to a sad end. The next day in class, a guilt-ridden Bill admits that he accidentally caused Hobbs to be arrested. Private Myers, who was beginning to fall in love with Hobbs, is inconsolable. She and several other students blame their teacher for destroying Hobbs' life. But Bill uses a verse from Hamlet to point out that every man's actions determine the fate of their lives. He also realizes that him being a snarky, unpunctual dad has caused his relationship with his daughter, Emily, to deteriorate. That afternoon, Bill goes to a pawn shop and sells off an expensive decorative item from his apartment. He uses the money to buy an airplane ticket to Mexico for Emily. She always had an interest in astronomy and wanted to visit Mexico with her science club to see a once-in-a-lifetime eclipse. Although Bill had always mocked her interest as a bad career choice, he makes up for it by also gifting her a telescope. Following this, he goes back to Fort McLean in order to repair his relationship with the students. He requests Captain Murdoch to allow him and his students to go for a trip to Canada. He wants to take them to watch a live performance of Hamlet. Thus, with official passes, Bill and students travel to Stratford Theatre in Ontario. Many of these students who come from poor backgrounds watch the rousing performance and are filled with inspiration. Even Melvin, who usually sleeps during classes, sits wide awake during the whole show. They go back to their base, buzzing and full of hope. But their fun soon comes to an end, as when they return back to the base, Bill sets an end-of-term oral examination. Everyone, especially Leroy, is disturbed by this idea as he hates exams and asks Bill to give them a pass without conducting any exams. But Bill wants them to earn their way through this course and does not budge from his idea of taking a test. Later, he takes this idea to Captain Murdoch, who does not sound happy with it at all. He, along with everyone in Fort McLean, is happy with the cadets' progress and wants them to graduate out of the program. But since the Army takes tests seriously, if the students fail, they will be thrown out despite the progress. And yet, Bill does not change his mind as he wants his students to earn the right of being graduated. In the meantime, Bill also starts searching for information on Brian's father, Davis Sr., in the records department. A sensitive young man, Brian only joined the Army because of his father, who was martyred in Vietnam. His friends often mock him for talking too much about it. While searching for the information, Bill runs into Marie, a staff sergeant who works for the base's records department. The two hit off and start going for dates. One night, while they are sitting in the canteen, Sharon, who is Marie's assistant, interrupts their conversation. Marie introduces her to Bill and reveals that Sharon is Leroy's wife. Grateful for helping her husband, Sharon thanks Bill and gives him a file that contains information on Davis Sr. The teacher thanks Marie and Sharon and wishes her best of luck for the upcoming child. Inside the report is a detailed report of Davis Sr.'s bravery during combat in Vietnam. He was to be awarded a Silver Star for his war efforts, but since he was killed, the felicitation never went forward. Bill realizes how much this would mean for Brian and wants to tell him about this. Following this, he rushes to the training field with the report to talk to Brian. But all his students are busy in training with the strict Sergeant Crass. Despite the heavy rain, Crass makes them go through all the drills without any mistakes. Bill calls out to him, wanting to take Brian to the side for a while. But the sergeant ignores Bill and rather calls for Private Benitez to stand in front of everyone. He then asks Benitez to recite whatever he learned in his English class. All the while, Bill is watching from nearby. Private Benitez recites the St. Crispin's Day speech by King Henry V while in full combat gear in the middle of a rainstorm. The speech talks about how soldiers get scars during wars and carry it honorably so that their future generations can see the sacrifices that were made in the past. Through the speech, he also thanks his colleagues and calls them brothers. This rousing speech even melts the usually strict Crass, who commends Benitez on his progress. When the training is over, Bill hands Davis Sr.'s report to Crass and asks him to do the right thing. On the other hand, Hobbs writes a letter to Bill and Murdoch about his time in the prison. In the letters, Hobbs reveals the positive impact Bill had in his life and says he read Othello in the prison library. The librarian adds that he was the first inmate in 16 years to request Shakespeare. Furthermore, Hobbs also explains that he is thinking about taking college classes once he's released. A few days later, the test arrives and Bill asks each student several questions. Despite being nervous, everyone answers each question diligently, passing the exams with flying colors. When the graduation ceremony comes, Colonel Jones presents Private Brian Davis is presented with the Silver Star Medal on behalf of his martyred father. As the proud soldiers march at their graduation parade, Bill is saluted by his graduates. Later, he signs on to continue teaching soldiers in training.